Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, when we're tackling something pretty fundamental, that human urge for recognition, for credit. We're diving into a stack of sources all centered on a really challenging idea: living to give glory to God alone. And this isn't just, theological jargon. Our mission here is to unpack these texts, figure out the core mechanism they're describing, and pull out the practical, actionable stuff they offer for dealing with, well, life, the successes, the failures, even just the everyday grind.
That's right. We're looking at some key biblical passages, plus theological commentary that digs into them. And before we jump into how to do this, we really need to understand the concept itself. Glory, in the original sense, it often carried this idea of heaviness or visible worth, what makes something substantial, valuable. So the aim of this deep dive is to explore why these sources insist this ultimate worth, this glory, belongs exclusively to God, and importantly, what specific instructions that leaves for you, the listener.
Yeah, and it feels like the sources really get human nature, because they don't exactly ease you in, do they? They jump straight into challenging our default setting, which is basically taking credit when things go well.
Precisely. They set up this immediate resistance to self-praise. And the bedrock for this whole idea, you often find it in Psalm 115, verse 1. It's this really powerful refusal of credit right up front. Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but to your name give glory.
Okay, wait, finish the verse, though, because the reason given is key, isn't it?
Right. Because of your mercy, because of your truth, that's the crucial part.
Let's dig into that specific bit. The sources are pretty sharp here. They don't just say, give God glory because he's mighty. They tie it directly to his mercy and his truth. Why focus on those two relational aspects? Why not his power or creation?
That's a great question, and it's the nuance the commentary really brings out. See, if it were just based on raw power, glorifying God could feel a bit, transactional, like just acknowledging a bigger force. But linking it specifically to mercy and truth, well, the sources frame giving glory less as an obligation and more as a response to who God is in relationship to us, his consistent character, his faithfulness shown through his truth, and his undeserved kindness shown through his mercy. It makes the foundation relational, not just hierarchical.
Okay, so the first step is twofold then. One, actively resist that urge to pat yourself on the back. Two, when good things happen, consciously connect that success back to God's mercy and truth. That's a huge mental shift, isn't it? I mean, if I've just nailed a big presentation at work or maybe finished a really tough project, how do I actually do that not unto us part in the moment? It feels abstract.
And that's the exact transition the sources anticipate. They know we can't just, stop achieving things or stop living our lives. So if we can't take the credit, the obvious next question is, well, what do we do? How do we actually live out this redirected focus? This is where the texts shift gears, moving us from the principle, where credit belongs, to the everyday, tangible practice of how we channel our energy, our actions.
Right, and this is where the instruction just explodes outwards, doesn't it? It goes from this sort of internal philosophical thing to something incredibly mundane almost. Our sources point to 1 Corinthians 10.31, which has got to be one of the most radical lines. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating there is how that single verse completely reframes where spirituality happens. For ages, religious practice often focused on the big stuff, right? Temple rituals, major fasts, huge acts of self-denial, or, grand spiritual gestures. This verse basically pulls glory out of the cathedral and plunks it right down on your kitchen table.
It almost sounds, a bit silly when you put it like that. Giving glory while, eating a bowl of cereal.
But the commentary suggests that's the genius of it. By including the most basic, necessary, frequent things we do, like eating and drinking, the instruction fundamentally changes our whole concept of purpose. The idea is, if you can practice this redirection in those tiny, ordinary moments, then the principle becomes truly ingrained. It makes every moment potentially sacred, not just the big scheduled religious events.
And the sources get specific about how. They mention small acts in our daily lives as the main way to do this, things like serving others and showing kindness. Okay, but here's a potential hang-up for you listening. If I have to be constantly thinking about glorifying God while I'm eating, while I'm driving, replying to emails, isn't that exhausting? Does it risk making everything feel, small? Where's the room for celebrating big achievements if it's all about washing the dishes for God's glory?
Well, the sources seem to argue it's about the intention, not necessarily the scale of the act itself. That's the powerful synthesis they offer. Every moment, every action is an opportunity to manifest this glory. It doesn't mean you can't have big achievements. It just means the underlying why, the purpose behind even the big things, and your attitude while doing them needs to line up with this bigger goal. The ultimate aim, as the sources state it, is for us to become vessels of His glory in everything we do.
I think the real takeaway here, especially for you, the listener, is how immediate this makes it. It yanks the idea of spiritual fulfillment out of some distant, heroic future and puts it squarely in, well, right now. It makes the whole concept super relevant, instantly actionable. You don't need to, quit your job and hike up a mountain. You just need to adjust the why behind whatever task is right in front of you.
Exactly. That's the transformative potential. It completely reframes what success even means. Success isn't about racking up personal points anymore, but about how faithfully you align your actions, big or small, with that central purpose.
Which brings us back to that key word from our intro, alone. Why does it have to be to God alone? Why is that exclusivity hammered home so hard in the sources?
Yeah.
What's the theological underpinning for that?
Yeah, that's crucial. For that, we often look to Isaiah chapter 42, verse 8. It's this really definitive statement about God's identity and, well, ownership. It draws a very clear line. I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory I will not give to another,
Wow.
nor my praise to carved images.
That's pretty unambiguous. That is my name. It links his very identity to this. And then the boundary, my glory I will not give to another. The sources really emphasize that this glory isn't like, pie you can share. It's non-transferable, especially not to idols or anything we create as a substitute.
Yeah.
So it's not just about cosmic bookkeeping. It's about theological integrity, right? If glory could be shared, it would fundamentally dilute the unique identity claimed in that verse.
Absolutely. And then, to see the full scale of this, the sources often connect it to the entire structure of reality itself. Romans 11, verse 36 gives this incredible cosmic perspective. For of him and through him and to him are all things, to whom be glory forever. Amen.
That verse is so dense. Short, but wow, the implications. It basically describes a completely closed system of existence, doesn't it?
Precisely. The structure is total. Everything comes of him, that's the origin. Everything operates through him, that's the means, the sustenance. And everything ultimately returns to him, that's the purpose, the end goal. So if all reality works that way, then attributing glory can't logically be shared, because trying to share it or claim a piece of it would be like trying to introduce another source, another sustainer, another ultimate goal into the system. And the sources basically say that's metaphysically impossible given how creation is set up.
Okay, so let's recap the instructions we've gathered so far. We need an internal attitude shift, rejecting credit. We need a shift in daily action, making the mundane sacred through service and kindness. And we need this deep recognition of cosmic ownership, this closed system where all glory belongs exclusively. But how does this play out publicly? If you've got that internal conviction, how should it actually look on the outside in your interactions, in your words? The sources move towards confession here, right? Quoting Philippians 2:11.
Yeah, this verse brings in the crucial element of outward declaration. It moves beyond just internal belief or quiet actions. It explicitly states the goal, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father.
So now it's not just about doing all things for his glory, but also saying it. It pulls the whole thing out of the private sphere. Why is that verbal public confession piece so important to complete the picture?
Well, the commentaries often suggest that this confession acts as the outward proof, the verification that the internal change is genuine. It's about publicly aligning your speech with the life you're trying to live. Your actions, the serving, the kindness, they demonstrate the glory in practice. Your words, the confession, they correctly attribute that glory. It's about making sure your inner belief system and your outer communication, well, they match up.
And the ultimate goal of bringing those together.
The sources seem to wrap it all up in this really comprehensive directive. Let our words and lives always reflect his glory. It's the culmination of the whole journey from that initial internal surrender of credit through the daily actions right up to the external verbal alignment. It demands that the same intention we bring to, say, eating our lunch, must also shape how we talk about our purpose, our identity, who gets the credit.
Okay, so if we were to boil down the core life instructions from just this stack of sources, trying to make it really sharp and memorable for you listening, it seems to break down into maybe 3 key actions. First, attribute. That means consciously redirecting credit away from yourself for any success, and instead pointing specifically to God's mercy and truth as the source. Second, integrate. This is about transforming your daily grind, seeing every mundane task, eating, working, commuting as a genuine opportunity to serve others, show kindness, and basically make your whole life a reflection of this purpose. And third, confess. Making sure your outward life, what people see, and your public words, what people hear, actually line up with this internal dedication, openly acknowledging the exclusive, ultimate source of everything.
Yeah, I think that covers it. And the core takeaway, the really profound thing these sources establish is the stark contrast. They completely reorient what we strive for. They draw the sharp line between seeking personal validation, personal glory, versus seeing your entire existence, every bit of it, as a channel for something higher, something exclusive. It forces a total redefinition of success. Success is no longer about how much credit you accumulate, but about how faithfully you align everything with that source of mercy and truth.
So this deep dive, we started asking about glory, and we ended up with this incredibly specific, all-encompassing lifestyle dedication. It touches literally everything, what we do, what we say, what we believe deep down. And maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. If these sources are right, if every tiny, ordinary act, even just grabbing a coffee or answering an email, is genuinely an opportunity for ultimate glory, well, does that imply that true spiritual fulfillment isn't found waiting for some spectacular mountaintop experience, but actually demands radical moment-by-moment presence and intention right here in the small stuff? Something to think about.